certification on arson. It's the physical evidence that I'll show you in this presentation that would lead you to that through that process of elimination. And if you don't know, you don't know. I mean, there's been cases where I say, I know the guy set the fire, but how am I going to prove it? Unless,
This was a consultant, I've never been on this job site, that went ahead and installed point moisture sensors as part of a large building restoration. And the bathrooms were always giving them difficulties because of the built-up moisture on the exterior wall.
Want you to set forth in your hypothesis that it's arson and blah, 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 blah. And as Barry points out, arson is a legal term. And if I recall correctly, it's the only time you can say arson is after the jury has said, yeah, we agree with you, it's arson. It's what, a man-made fire?
Well, no, arson's a crime.
There you go.
Once you prove it's a crime, okay. But if a client comes to you and says, I want you to prove this is an arson, fire him as a client. You don't want to get involved.
We'll talk about that.
Best reference was the video from the television stations. They had their helicopters shooting this thing. And they show, what do you get, 15 seconds out of their...
Getting calls to do storm damage assessment. You're getting calls before this type of data gets produced. And this is better data than what is available to you to work with.
You can have 12 wires. If it's Schedule 40, you can have 15 wires. Everybody know the difference between Schedule 40 and Schedule 80? Wall thickness. Which diameter is different? Outside or inside? Inside, that's correct. Therefore, it's smaller, therefore
They did do some remedies. The crack that I zoomed in on here, I honestly think that was a flexural crack as an overstressed situation and not just a shrinkage crack. So after they had the experts come in, the experts developed this
There are kind of two phases of the internal retention of documents. We typically for 3 years, that's our internal rule. We keep almost everything, which means we can weed out some.
Because it was very important that they understood what we went through in terms of having the motorcycle ride in the right lane, right side of the lane, the left side of the lane, up to the stop bar.
Three-phase versus single-phase. You find three-phase wiring in industrial and large buildings quite commonly, particularly for motors that are 1 horse and larger, just because they run so much more efficiently. The later codes for three-phase
Everybody in the world, or at least in this country and in Britain and places that follow the English common law, everyone has a duty to conduct himself and his property in such a way as to not cause harm to someone else. That's your duty. Everybody has that duty. If you breach that duty, you can be found liable. How do you breach the duty?
What we're going to do, we're going to go through it all together again. He brought his assistant along, he wrote down everything, got all the details. They worked on it for a month or two, and there's the wall that was gone. That's all. I know from structural engineering, and you guys do too, you could take that wall out with not much involvement. Could be a few thousand pounds.
Foundation wall are independent concrete structures. A foundation wall is resting on a footing, and in North Dakota, the building code requires us to put those footings 4 feet below the grade for frost protection. And it's going to vary depending upon where you are in the country.
You can see a beam. This is where the bay was cut off, even though the door is a little bit longer. This is the top of the bay. These are the pre-charge pre-charge resistors, pre-charge contractors, power cable fees. There was absolutely no arcing on any of the power cables. None whatsoever. This is the middle. This is where the 36 capacitors were located. This is what these are where the capacitors were on this piece of glass stick, which is about this thick. It's new.
International Residential Code and International Building Codes, the wind loads requirements have been even more stringent. They've raised wind load design in some areas and lowered them in others. So the changes in wind loads is one example. Another one is base flood elevation. Down in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina.
Of course, oil is cheaper when you buy it in bulk, and of course facility of this size that has 6 of these units, which is has all of the delivery in 55-gallon drums. Well, problem is that you never deliver 55 gallons into one of these vehicles, so the drum is open when they take a quota.